My name is Natalie. I'm 27 years old, and until recently, I was just an ordinary kindergarten teacher. My life was small, simple, and lived paycheck to paycheck in a tiny apartment. But a few weeks ago, a phone call in the middle of the night changed everything. My grandparents, the two people who truly raised me, were gone, and they had left me their entire $26 million estate. If you want to watch money reveal the darkest parts of a family, you've come to the right place. Before we dive into the chaos, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you believe in standing your ground against greed, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories. Growing up, my parents were physically present, but emotionally a million miles away. My father, Richard, was obsessed with climbing the corporate ladder. My mother, Diane, dedicated her life to networking with the right social circles. Family dinners were rare, usually interrupted by work calls or discussions about appearances. They provided a roof over my head, but warmth and guidance were always in short supply. My real home was with my grandparents, Elizabeth and Harold. From the age of 5, I spent every weekend and summer at their modest 4-bedroom house. Despite their immense wealth, they lived with a beautiful simplicity. Grandpa Harold taught me how to grow tomatoes in his vegetable garden. Grandma Elizabeth showed me how to bake cookies from scratch. They were there for every school play and soccer game my own parents missed. They built their fortune from nothing. Alexander Logistics started in their garage with a single truck and a powerful dream. By the time I was born, it was a regional powerhouse. Yet, you would never know it by looking at them. Grandpa drove the same pickup truck for 20 years. Grandma clipped coupons and bought her clothes on sale. They always told me, money is just a tool, Natalie. It's not a measurement of your worth. Use it to build something meaningful, not to impress people who don't matter. That philosophy created a deep rift with my father. As their only son, he expected a life of luxury handed to him on a silver platter. He resented their frugality, calling them stingy and old-fashioned. What they saw as character building, he saw as deprivation. The final break happened when my father demanded a senior position at their company, despite having zero relevant experience. My grandparents refused, telling him he had to earn it like everyone else. He stormed out, and their relationship never recovered. With me, they were different. They paid for my education, allowing me to graduate debt-free, but they encouraged me to choose a career based on passion, not profit. When I decided to become a kindergarten teacher, they were genuinely thrilled. 6 weeks ago, my world shattered. I was grading papers on a Tuesday evening when the police called. A drunk driver had run a red light. My grandparents died instantly. The officer said they didn't suffer, but that was little comfort. The funeral was a blur of hypocrisy. My parents argued with the director about costs. My brother, Jason, spent the entire time on his phone. My Aunt Pam cried dramatically for photos, then stopped the moment the cameras were put away. None of them had visited my grandparents in years, yet here they were, playing the part of the grieving family. I just felt numb. The two people who had given me unconditional love were gone. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Matthew Goldstein, my grandparents' attorney and trusted friend. He requested my presence for the reading of the will, along with the rest of my immediate family. I agreed, having no idea that this meeting wasn't just about reading a document. It was about to ignite a war I never wanted to fight. The morning of the will reading was gray and drizzly, a perfect match for my mood. I arrived at the law office early, clutching the umbrella my grandmother had insisted I keep in my car. The office was warm and paneled in dark wood, a stark contrast to the cold tension that followed me inside. Matthew Goldstein, a man with kind eyes and silver hair, greeted me with a gentle handshake. "Your grandparents were extraordinary people, Natalie," he said softly. "I'll miss our chess games." His genuine sorrow made my own grief feel real again. Before I could reply, the door swung open. My family had arrived. My father, Richard, entered first, impatiently checking his expensive watch. My mother, Diane, followed, her designer handbag probably costing more than my monthly rent. My brother, Jason, swaggered in behind them, wearing sunglasses indoors as if he were a celebrity. Last came my Aunt Pam, already complaining loudly on her phone, with her husband, Uncle Steve, trailing her like a silent shadow. "Well, let's get this over with," my father announced, skipping any pretense of a greeting. Some of us have actual businesses to run. We settled around a large oak conference table. The air was thick with greed. Matthew cleared his throat. "Before we begin," he said, "I want to state that Elizabeth and Harold were of completely sound mind when they updated their will last year. They were explicit in their wishes." My father snorted. "Just read it, Matt. We all know how this goes." Matthew adjusted his glasses and began. He read through the legal formalities, his voice calm and steady. Then, he reached the part everyone was waiting for. "We hereby bequeath our entire estate, including all cash assets, our investment portfolio, all real estate holdings, and our ownership stake in Alexander Logistics to our beloved granddaughter, Natalie Grace Foster." The room went completely silent. I stopped breathing. $26 million. It couldn't be real. Matthew continued, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. "We specifically and intentionally make no provisions for our son Richard, our daughter-in-law Diane, our grandson Jason." "Let me see that," my father shouted, shoving his heavy oak chair back with a screech. He snatched the document from Matthew's hands, his face turning a blotchy red as his eyes scanned the page frantically. "This is a joke. It has to be a joke. 26 million to a kindergarten teacher?" My mother shrieked. She wouldn't have the first clue what to do with that kind of money. Jason slammed his fist on the table. "What about me? I'm family. I need startup capital." Aunt Pam's face twisted with rage as she turned to me. "What did you do?" she hissed. "How did you manipulate them?" I sat frozen, the accusations flying around me like shrapnel. Before the chaos could completely consume us, Matthew calmly retrieved the will. "There's more," he said, pressing a button on a remote. A large screen on the wall flickered to life, and there they were, my grandparents, sitting on their living room sofa. My heart clenched seeing them again, so alive, so real. Grandpa Harold spoke first. "If you are watching this, it means we've passed on. We wanted to explain our decision directly." Grandma Elizabeth continued, her gaze firm. "Richard, Pam, we love you, but we have been deeply disappointed by the values you've embraced. For decades, you have treated us like an ATM, not like parents." The video was a calm, devastating indictment. They detailed years of missed birthdays, of loans requested and never repaid, of dismissive comments about their simple lifestyle. "The business we built was about integrity," Grandpa said. "It was about treating people fairly. Natalie is the only one who has consistently demonstrated those values. She visits us because she cares, not because she wants something." As the screen went dark, my father exploded. "This is garbage. They were senile. We will contest this. No judge will uphold this insanity." My mother's tone suddenly shifted, becoming sickeningly sweet. "Natalie, darling," she cooed. "You understand this isn't right. Your grandparents were confused. This money belongs to the family. You'll share it with us, won't you?" All eyes were on me. I felt like a cornered animal. "I have to think about this," I stammered. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Matthew handed me a thick envelope. "This contains all the documents, the keys to their house, and contact information for their financial advisors," he said quietly. "You don't have to decide anything today." As we left, my father grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly tight. "This isn't over," he hissed. "Be at our house tonight, 6 o'clock. We will sort this out as a family." That evening, I walked into my parents' house, a place designed to impress, not to welcome. They were all waiting for me in the formal living room. "Let's be reasonable," my father began, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "Your grandparents weren't thinking clearly. We propose you sign over the estate to me. I'll manage it. You'll receive 10%, more than generous for someone with your limited needs. 10%, $2.5 million. "Exactly," Jason jumped in. "More than enough for a teacher. I need at least $5 million for my new crypto platform." Aunt Pam chimed in. "And the house should go to us. Our children deserve access to better schools." When their demands didn't work, they switched to guilt. "After all we've done for you," my mother said, her eyes welling up with crocodile tears, "we gave you life. This is how you repay family loyalty." Then came the threats. "We're not asking, Natalie." My father's voice turned to steel as he leaned forward, placing his hands flat on the polished coffee table. "We're telling you, either you sign, or we can test the will. And trust me," he added, his eyes narrowing, "it will get ugly." The air crackled with menace. I felt sick, but a quiet strength began to build inside me. A memory of my grandfather surfaced. "Know what is right, Natalie, and hold firm." As the hours passed, they grew bolder. Jason started drafting transfer paperwork on his laptop. Aunt Pam was already scrolling through real estate listings for my grandparents' neighborhood. They were dividing up my inheritance right in front of me, spending every last dollar in their minds. At 10:30, my father slid a crudely written document across the coffee table. "Sign it," he commanded. No. I picked up the paper. It was a complete surrender of my rights. I put it down. I took a deep breath, and I said the word that would change my life forever. "No." My father's face darkened. "What did you just say?" I said no. I repeated, my voice steady. "I will not sign this. My grandparents trusted me with their legacy, and I intend to honor that trust." The room erupted. My mother screamed about my ingratitude. Jason called me names I won't repeat. My father slammed his glass on the table, cracking it. He stalked towards me, his finger jabbing at the air inches from my face. "You have a choice," he roared. "Sign that paper and remain a part of this family. Or take your precious inheritance and consider yourself disowned. You can't have both." I looked at their faces, twisted with greed and rage. There was no love there. There was no family. There was only a transaction they had lost. "I'm not signing," I said, standing up. "Then get out of my house," he snarled. "I live in my own apartment," I reminded him. He let out a cold, cruel laugh. "The apartment we co-signed for? Because your teacher's salary couldn't qualify? We own that building, Natalie. It's one of our investment properties. Consider your lease terminated." My stomach dropped. I had never known. They had held this power over me all along. "You have 30 minutes to pack," my mother said coldly, checking her watch. "The locks on your apartment will be changed by morning. And your personal things in this house? They'll be in the trash 30 minutes from now." 30 minutes. 30 minutes to pack up the pieces of my life that were left in my childhood home. I moved in a daze, running to my old bedroom closet and grabbing clothes, my diploma, and a few small keepsakes, stuffing them into bags. I couldn't even think about the truly important things back at my apartment. I would never be able to get back inside that room again. My father stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me like a prison guard. "You were never really part of this family anyway," he said, his voice devoid of all emotion. "Your mother and I were going to divorce before she got pregnant with you. You were the obligation that kept us together." The words, spoken with such casual cruelty, hit me like a physical blow. For a second, the air left my lungs, and the hallway seemed to tilt. "An obligation. We've wasted enough money on you," my mother added, appearing beside him. "Your private school, the braces, the summer camps. Consider this the end of our investment. An investment, not a daughter." Jason leaned against the wall, a smug smirk on his face. "You'll regret this. Those millions won't keep you warm at night." I zipped up my last bag, fighting back tears. I would not give them the satisfaction. As I walked past them to the door, my father spoke one last time. "Anything you leave behind goes in the trash tomorrow. Your call." At the front door, I turned for a final look. "You might have the money now," my mother said, "but you'll have no one. You'll see what you've thrown away. I'm not the one throwing away family," I replied quietly. "You are." The heavy door slammed shut behind me, the sound echoing with a terrible finality. Standing by my car, the weight of it all came crashing down. I was homeless. I was disowned. I had $26 million to my name. But I had never felt more alone in my entire life. I sat in my car and finally let myself cry, great heaving sobs that shook my entire body. After the tears ran dry, a single thought pierced through the fog of my grief. The envelope. I tore it open. Inside, among the papers, was a set of keys on a familiar rabbit-shaped keychain. The keys to my grandparents' house. The house that was now, unbelievably, mine. I had a place to go. A place to start fighting back. I drove the 20 minutes to my grandparents' neighborhood on autopilot. The house was exactly as I remembered it. Warm and inviting. A porch light glowing like a beacon in the dark. For a long moment, I just sat in the driveway, the keys shaking in my hand. Walking into that house without them there felt like a betrayal. but the alternative was sleeping in my car. I grabbed a single bag and forced myself to the front door. The house smelled of lemon verbena and old books, the scent of my entire childhood. I flipped on a light, half expecting to hear my grandpa's booming laugh from the den. The silence was a physical weight, pressing down on me. I dropped my bag in the guest room I'd always used, where fresh towels were still folded on the dresser, waiting for a visit that would never happen. The sight of that small, thoughtful gesture broke me. I collapsed onto the bed and cried until there was nothing left but a hollow exhaustion. Morning came with a phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. It was a storm of texts from my family, a bizarre mix of threats and manipulative apologies. My father's was the most direct. "You have 24 hours to reconsider before we file suit." But it was Jason's that sent a chill down my spine. "Enjoying the big empty house?" Not for long. It felt like a real threat. I immediately forwarded it to Matthew, whose response was swift and urgent. "Stay where you are. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Do not open the door for anyone else." Matthew arrived carrying a briefcase and 2 coffees, his presence an island of calm in my chaotic world. We sat in the kitchen, at the small breakfast nook where my grandma and I used to share secrets. "They've already contacted 3 different law firms," he said, sliding a coffee toward me. "I anticipated this. But first, about your apartment." He listened grimly as I told him about being kicked out. He nodded. "A classic Richard tactic. What he doesn't know is that your grandparents prepared for this exact scenario." He pulled a document from his briefcase. It was the deed to a small cottage 20 minutes outside of town. "Your grandmother bought this 5 years ago and kept it in a separate trust for you. Richard has no idea it exists. You have a safe place to go." Relief washed over me so intensely I almost cried again. Just then, a soft knock came from the back door. Matthew smiled. That would be Carlos. I opened the door to a man in his 50s with kind, weathered eyes. "Miss Natalie," he said, holding his hat respectfully. "I am Carlos Ramirez. I was your grandparents' estate manager for 15 years. I saw your car and wanted to see if you needed anything." His simple decency was almost too much to bear. "Thank you, Carlos," I managed. "I'm a bit overwhelmed. Mr. Harold and Mrs. Elizabeth worried that might happen," he said gently. "They asked me to look after you." He then revealed he lived in the guest house at the back of the property and had been keeping watch. But he had more to share. "Your father and brother," Carlos said, his voice careful. "They came here after the funeral, when they thought no one was around. They took things. Watches, jewelry, some electronics. I have it all on the security cameras." I had completely forgotten about the cameras. "They didn't know Mr. Harold had me update the system last year," Carlos continued, a grim look on his face. "He said he didn't trust the one your father installed." Matthew made a note. "That footage will be invaluable." "There's more," Carlos said, leading me to my grandmother's study. He pointed to a wall of built-in bookshelves, filled with dozens of identical leather-bound journals. Mrs. Elizabeth documented everything. He pulled one from the shelf and handed it to me. "This one mentions your father's last visit." I opened it to a random page, my grandmother's elegant script filling the lines. "Richard visited today. First time in 7 months." Immediately launched into a pitch for a $250,000 investment. When Harold refused, he became hostile, accused us of preferring Natalie, saying she only visits to secure her inheritance. He couldn't be more wrong. Natalie has never asked for a penny. I read entry after entry, a documented history of my family's greed. As I was reading, the doorbell rang. It was Dorothy, my grandparents' housekeeper of 20 years. She hugged me tightly. "You look just like Elizabeth," she whispered. Over the next few hours, more people arrived. Rosa Martinez, my grandparents' sharp as ATAC business partner. George Patel, their unflappable investment advisor. Sarah Johnson, their next-door neighbor, who arrived with a homemade casserole. They weren't just employees or associates. They were a community, a chosen family. They shared stories, offered help, and piece by piece, revealed the fortress my grandparents had built around me. Dorothy found a hidden compartment in a desk containing years of my father's letters, each one demanding money. She also handed me a USB drive. "Security footage from the day of the funeral," she said sadly. "Your mother, going through Elizabeth's jewelry box before the reception even started." My grandparents hadn't just left me money. They had left me an arsenal. They had left me an army. Around 4 p.m., as Matthew was walking me through the financials, my phone pinged. It was another text from Jason. Hope you're comfy. Dad, Mom, Aunt Pam, and I are coming over tomorrow morning at 10 to collect what's rightfully ours. Better not try to stop us. I showed the message to Matthew. His expression hardened. That's it, he muttered. It's time to activate the final part of their plan. He made a series of quick phone calls, his voice low and firm. When he hung up, he looked at me with a determined fire in his eyes. Your grandparents knew this day might come, Natalie. Tomorrow morning, we will be ready for them. The next morning, the house was filled not with grief, but with quiet resolve. By 9:30, my allies had assembled. Matthew stood by my side, a folder of legal documents at the ready. Rosa Martinez had her laptop open on the dining room table. Company financials queued up. Carlos stood near the front door, a silent and imposing guardian. Dorothy bustled around, filling coffee cups, her presence a comforting link to my grandparents' swarm. At 9:45, a procession of luxury cars pulled into the driveway. They were early, hoping to catch me off guard. The doorbell rang, followed by an impatient pounding. Matthew nodded to Carlos, who opened the door. My father stood on the threshold, his face a mask of arrogant determination. Where is she? He demanded. Miss Natalie is expecting you, Carlos said, his voice a wall of granite. Please come in. My family filed into the foyer and stopped dead, the sound of their expensive shoes echoing on the hardwood floor before falling silent. Their smug expressions faltered, melting away into confusion and then suspicion as they took in the room full of people. I stood in the center of the living room, waiting for them. What is this? My mother asked, her voice brittle. You brought outsiders into a private family matter? Before I could respond, the front door opened again. 3 more people entered, and the atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. First came Judge Robert Henderson, a retired and highly respected man who had been my grandparents' close friend for decades. He was followed by Police Chief Maria Williams, a woman whose own daughter's education had been funded by my grandparents' quiet charity. My father's face went pale. Robert, he stammered, attempting a friendly tone. What a surprise. The judge's expression was stone. I am here at the request of Harold and Elizabeth Alexander. They asked me to serve as an impartial witness to any family disputes regarding their estate. My mother turned to Chief Williams. Why is law enforcement here? We're just here to collect family heirlooms. The chief smiled, a thin, dangerous smile. I'm here as a friend of the family, unless, of course, a crime is committed. Then my official duties would naturally take precedence. My family was speechless. Jason just stood there, his jaw slack. This wasn't the ambush they had planned. It was their own. I finally stepped forward, my voice clear and steady. I know why you're here. You believe you can bully me into giving you what you want, but you are mistaken. Those old fools were manipulated. My father blustered, finding his voice. We're here to correct their mistake. From behind me, another voice cut in. It was Thomas Jang, their longtime financial advisor. Actually, Richard, I have documentation of every attempt you made to access your parents' assets for the last 20 years. He opened a folder, including the forged check in 2018 and your attempt to have Elizabeth declared incompetent last year. My father reeled back as if he'd been struck, his face losing all its color. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out, only a choked, sputtering sound. Rosa Martinez was next. I also have records of the $200,000 company loan you never repaid, Richard. The one for your vacation home in Aspen. You turned them against us. Aunt Pam shrieked at me. You poisoned them with lies. Actually, Mrs. Davis, Judge Henderson said calmly. I've reviewed Elizabeth's journals. Your parents were quite clear about their reasoning. There was no poison necessary. My mother scoffed. This is all very theatrical, but it changes nothing. We will still contest the will. Matthew stepped forward, holding a thick envelope for each of them. I would advise against that. This packet contains evidence that would become public record during a contest. Banking records, text messages, and the video footage Carlos so helpfully preserved. He looked pointedly at my mother and father. Footage of you removing items from this house after the funeral. Uncle Steve, who had been silent, tore his envelope open. His face grew paler with every page he turned. My mother, seeing his reaction, snatched her own envelope, her manicured hands trembling slightly as she read. Her carefully constructed mask of indignation began to crack. Finally, Steve touched Pam's arm. "We need to go," he whispered urgently. "This isn't a fight we can win." My father stood frozen, staring at the documents in his hand. He was ruined, and he knew it. The entire foundation of his respectable, powerful image was a lie. And here was the proof, ready to be shown to the world. Now, it was my turn. I walked to the sideboard and picked up the papers Matthew had prepared for me. I handed one to Jason. "This is a cease and desist order, addressing your threats." I handed a set to my father and mother. "This is a formal demand for the immediate return of all items stolen from this house." Finally, I looked at all of them, my voice ringing with a strength I didn't know I possessed. "And these are my terms for any future contact. They begin with a complete and total end to all attempts to undermine my grandparents' will. They require respect. They require you to see me as a person, not a bank account." The room was silent. They were utterly defeated, not by lawyers or by money, but by the truth. They had been exposed by the very people they had dismissed as old and irrelevant. My father was the first to break. "This isn't over," he seethed. But the words were hollow. The fight had gone out of him. "Actually, Richard, it is," Judge Henderson said. "Your parents were meticulous. Any legal challenge you mount will fail." Spectacularly. One by one, they turned and walked toward the door, their arrogant crusade dissolving into a pathetic retreat. As Jason passed me, he shot me a look of pure hatred. "This doesn't change anything," he muttered. "Oh, it changes everything," I replied calmly. When the door finally closed behind them, the tension in the room vanished. Dorothy immediately began pouring fresh coffee, her simple act a way of cleansing the space. The others gathered around me, their faces reflecting not triumph, but quiet support. In that moment, surrounded by these good, loyal people, I finally understood. My grandparents' true legacy wasn't the $26 million. It was this community, this family, bound not by blood, but by love and respect. I had lost the family I was born into, but I had just discovered the one I was always meant to have. 6 months passed in a blur of learning and liberation. The initial weeks were a whirlwind of legal paperwork and financial planning. My biological family, true to form, made a few pathetic attempts to reconnect. My father called about a short-term loan when his business hit a rough patch. My mother suddenly wanted to serve on the board when her social circle learned about my new foundation. Each time, I politely and firmly repeated my terms. They were never met. With the guidance of Matthew, Rosa, and my grandparents' trusted team, I found my footing. My first act was to establish the Elizabeth and Harold Alexander Foundation for Education. I dedicated $10 million to its mission, supporting underprivileged students and underfunded schools. We focused on arts and vocational training, 2 areas my grandparents believed were the bedrock of a healthy community. To everyone's surprise, I returned to my job as a kindergarten teacher. My classroom at Sunshine Elementary became a living example of what was possible with proper resources. I personally funded new books, art supplies, and technology the school's budget could never afford. Every child got healthy snacks and warm winter coats. Small things for me that made an immense difference in their lives. The joy I found in a 5-year-old's eyes as they learned to read was worth more than any stock portfolio. Under Rosa's patient mentorship, I also began to understand the logistics business. I didn't take an active management role, but I made sure the company honored my grandparents' core values. We strengthened the employee profit-sharing program and bolstered their retirement benefits. The business wasn't just a source of wealth. It was a source of stability for over 100 families, and I treated it as such. My grandparents' house, once so painfully empty, slowly began to feel like a home again. I moved into the master bedroom, though it took months before I could sleep there without feeling like an intruder. Carlos and I transformed the large basement into a beautiful community space for foundation events and workshops. Dorothy still came 3 times a week, refusing to fully retire, claiming my coffee was terrible and someone had to keep an eye on me. The Sunday dinners my grandparents had cherished were reborn. Now, I was the host. My table was filled with my chosen family, Matthew, Rosa, Carlos and his wife, Dorothy, and the other loyal friends who had stood by me. We celebrated holidays, shared milestones, and supported each other. It was a family built on something far stronger than shared DNA. It was built on shared values. One crisp autumn morning, I finally visited my grandparents' graves. The headstone was simple and elegant, just like them. I brought a bouquet of their favorite flowers and sat on the small bench nearby. I'm trying my best, I told the quiet air. The foundation just awarded its first full college scholarships. 3 students who never thought it was possible are going to university. A gentle breeze rustled the trees, sending golden leaves spiraling down. I wish you were here to see it, but I think you already knew this would happen. In the months since their passing, I discovered the true depth of their quiet generosity. They had anonymously paid medical bills, saved families from foreclosure, and put employees as children through college, all without any need for recognition. They hadn't just built a fortune. They had woven a tapestry of kindness throughout their community. Thank you, I whispered, the words catching in my throat. Thank you for trusting me. I finally understand. It was never about the money. It was about what money can do when it's guided by purpose. The next day, I hosted the foundation's first scholarship ceremony. We awarded full college funding to 20 brilliant high school seniors. As I watched them walk across the stage, their faces shining with hope and disbelief, I felt my grandparents' presence more strongly than ever. After the event, a young woman named Maria approached me, her eyes filled with tears. My parents both work 2 jobs, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. No one in my family has ever gone to college. This changes everything, not just for me, but for my younger siblings, who now know that a different future is possible. In that moment, the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. This was the legacy, not the stocks or the real estate, but this ripple effect of positive change. My grandparents had trusted me to be the steward of that legacy, to amplify their values long after they were gone. The money had revealed my family's true colors, but it had also illuminated a community of genuine love and connection. That was the true inheritance. As I move forward, I continue to teach. I run the foundation. I honor the business that started in a garage. The wealth is a powerful tool, but it doesn't define me. I still drive a practical car and find my greatest joy in simple things. My grandparents taught me that character matters more than cash. I finally understand that the greatest fortune you can have is a life built on purpose, integrity, and love. Have you ever had to stand up to pressure from loved ones to do what you knew was right? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need the courage to stand their ground. Remember, true family is about respect, not obligation. Thank you for listening.